Welcome to another servicing video. Today we have this Yamaha 20A. It's a very early model. I believe it's from the range of 1972 to 78. This is the one with the code 653. It's got the serial data plate there. So as you can see, it's Yamaha 20A 653. I believe it's a sort of a short leg with an S, and the number is 00207. Let's say it's a very early model. I'm not sure on the actual age of it, but it ranges from 1972 to 78. So best case scenario, we're looking, this engine's at its youngest is 47 years old. So this Yamaha 20A, it's set up for remotes, and here you can see the connections for the gear selector and the throttle, and here's the corresponding connections. So that's your gear. You can see there, reverse, neutral, forward, and that's your throttle connection there. It's a recoil start, but it also has electric start, so you've got the two connections here to go to the battery. Like I say, it's set up for remotes, but I think partly, once upon a time, you could have a tiller because there's the connection for it. Around on the control side, we've got the connection there for the steering arm, for the wheel. Got a fuel connection. There's a small, I think this is if it's the recoil start. I think that's just like a lightning connection for charging. I'm not sure. Got a choke, and we've got a key switch there. I don't know if these cables here sort of supersede this part. I'm not too sure what these two are for, but I've got a key for it. So it's a run and stop position. And as you can see, it's a manual trim and tilt. So unfortunately, due to the age of it, this brings us to the first problem that we've got with this engine. I mean, it's an amazing condition, but I've done a lot of searching online. I've spoken to a few part suppliers, and for this engine, a 20A 653, getting a water pump kit for it, I just can't seem to find anything for it. I mean, apart from taking the leg off and taking pictures of it and searching online and doing like an image search, I'm sort of at a loss as to what to do with the water pump. So I've advised the customer whose engine this is that I won't be able to do the water pump, but he says the engine's pumping water fine, but no issues with it. And we've sort of come to the conclusion that if it does get to that stage where the water pump isn't supplying enough coolant water to the engine, then we will take the gearbox off and take it apart and try and find it. So if anyone knows of any water pump kits, impellers, anything like that, or where to find them, please leave a comment in the comments section below, because that would be massively appreciated, because I just can't seem to find anything for this engine. I mean, it's a Yamaha 20A 653S 00207, and like I say, I went to a supplier and they just said the age of it, everything's been superseded. Now, that's not to say that there's not aftermarket parts, it's just they didn't have genuine Yamaha, which I suspect is true. They're not going to make parts for an engine nearly 50 years old, but I'm sure there must be another engine with another part number, an aftermarket one that fits, because they can't just have none, because these engines are not, it's not a rare engine by any means, it's people are still using them, so I suspect there is still parts for them. The top end, there doesn't seem to be an issue with the top end. I can get parts for the top end. It just seems to the gearbox end. So like I say, if you know of any, please let me know. If you can leave a link as well, that'd be even better. So because of that, today all we're going to do, we've got the spark plugs to do. We'll take the prop off, just check the condition. We'll change the gear oil. I've got a fuel filter as well, and we'll do a compression test. So nothing major at all with this engine. Like I say, because I can't get impellers or anything like that. And we'll take the thermostat out, test the thermostat. But like I say, the guy says it's running fine. So I don't want to tempt fate and do damage to something that we can't repair at the moment. So yeah, we'll start with it's basically like a light service. So go ahead now, and I'll take the lid off for us and have a see what's underneath. So with this engine, this Yamaha, it's just a latch at the front. We push that down and we can lift. Easier said than done one-handed. Over the recoil starter there, I'll just put that down on the ground. And then inside we can see in here we've got a start relay, we've got the carburetor, flywheel, the recoil assembly on top. It's a twin cylinder, independent coils. There's the throttle linkage there, so it's moving the timing plate, which is connected to the carburetor as well. Just coming around, 2 spark plugs, thermostat on top, exhaust jacket, rectifier, starter motor, we've got the negative coming off the battery, which is this one, positive coming around at the start, and obviously that side of the start solenoid goes to the other side of the starter motor there. So it's not too complicated, but it is a compact engine. There's quite a lot going on in here. A fuel pump on the side there, and the other thing in here, if you can just see it, we've got a fuel filter, aftermarket. I'm not sure whether this before had sort of like, you know, those replaceable insert cartridge ones that you could change, but this one's just an inline filter which will change. It's a fairly substantial one. Looks like a MAN filter. Definitely not original. Like I say, these 2-strokes, there's not much to change or service on them. And we've got the label there showing us the oil ratio, which is 1 to 100. So we're doing the fuel filter now, and the fuel filter is just in here. It's an inline filter, and to get to it we're just going to take off this start solenoid or start relay, and there's a 10mm bolt on there, so we'll just whiz that out. That'll be able to move out the way, and then we'll have access to the fuel filter. It's just 2 push connections with spring clips on them, and I've got another fuel filter to go on. Just making sure that, as you can see, these inline filters, they do have a flow indicator, so this one's flowing from right to left. It's a small arrow there by my thumb. Not that it's got check valves in it, but it's just for the surface area for the flow. Putting it in wrong, probably wouldn't notice a difference, but once the fuel filters start getting clogged up, you would notice a massive fuel reduction. I'd imagine some more advanced ones may have check valves in to stop fuel flowing back if it's like if the tank's below, anything like that. But this is just a standard inline filter. There's no check valves or anything in this one, but it's always good to put it the way the manufacturer says. So we'll be putting it from sort of, this is where my little finger is, that's from the tank, and that's going towards the carburetor, well, towards the fuel pump, then the carburetor. So it'll sit like that in the engine. So like I say, we'll just take that bolt out there, which is a 10mm socket requirement, and then get it out of the way, and we'll have access to the fuel filter. So that's it taken out. There's no nut on the back of it or anything like that. It just goes into a blind hole. And there we go, we can push that out the way. It's just some electrical connections. The positive and negative from the battery. Well, sorry, not the positive and negative, just the positive, which goes to this start solenoid, and then the other side of the positive goes to the starter motor. And the 2 little wires in between are from the key. So when you energize it, it connects both these cables together and starter motor spins over. So now we've got access to the fuel filter there. We can pull it out a little bit further. You can see the other end in there. We've got access to that end. So just with some pliers there, we'll pop them off and we can change it out. Very straightforward. So just squeezing the tabs there, you can push that back, and then we can just pull, which is always easier said than done, because depending on how long these have been on for, dictates how hard these are to get off. There we go, that one's off, and that one in there, you can just grab that spring clip as well. I always find with these filters, if you can't get it off because of the hose, when you try and pull it, you're almost like compressing the hose on. It's those, if you can grab the hose and twist, you can sort of break the connection on the filter, and it does come off. Just taking a bit of that old fuel out there. There's a little bit in there still. little bit dirty, but massive surface area on that filter. So now we've got access to do the new one, so it'll just sit in that recess there, plenty of space. So when using aftermarket filters, obviously this man filter isn't original to the engine at all. It's always a good idea, just compare the ones that you're doing. I know that that'll be fine for a 20 horsepower 2-stroke. We're just looking at the barbed ends and the length. Mine's a little bit shorter, but the barbed ends are exactly the same, but it's a 2-step, so if the hose was a bit big, we push it right to the bitter end and it'll step up a little bit. Then we just put the spring clips on. So yeah, we'll get this in, making sure that it's in the right direction. And it's pretty straightforward. It's like the spark plugs. These 2-strokes, they're not hard to service at all. Even the gear oil, things like that. Impeller is a little bit different, but like I stated earlier, can't get parts for the impeller, so we're going to leave that alone for now. Now I always find getting these filters back on, it's easier said than done. It's easier getting them off than it is getting them on, but with this one, just making sure you've got the right end. I'm going to push the furthest hose on first, just in case we do run into any difficulties. So that's that end on. I don't know if you can see that. That end's on in there. And then there's the spring clips just behind that, the back of the cylinder, behind the block body there. So I'll slide that on, get it over there, and then this one, we're just looking to push the hose sort of halfway, or as far as we can get it really. There's nothing complex about it, but I would like to just get this one a little bit further on. The more hose you've got on the barb, the better. So as you can see there, that's that new fuel filter in there. Just sits in that recess. Got the spring clips back on, front and back. The flow direction's correct. And now it's just a case of we'll put the start solenoid back on, put the 10mm bolt back in, and that's the fuel filter done. Just making sure that we haven't nipped the hose at any point or pinched it, and we haven't knocked any cables off at any point. I don't think we have. One thing you can do once you've done it is connect the fuel up and just pressurize the line, just to make sure you haven't got any leaks. Obviously you probably do that before you connect everything back up. It'll be a wasted journey. I've got the fuel tank down there, so I might do that now, and we can just check everything. We also give us, once we've got that relay off, it also gives us good access to the drain on the carburetor body as well, which if you were inclined to, you could unscrew and drain off a little bit, just in case you've got any dirt or water in there, which would be a good thing to do. So I might do that as well at the same time, and just make sure that there's nothing in there. Okay, so I've got the fuel line connected up there, got the tank here, prime and bulb, and we're just going to prime this fuel filter up, and you should see the fuel coming in, and that'll prime up all the way through the pump into the carburetor, and it should seal on the carburetor float once the carburetor is full. And what we're doing is we're just looking for any leaks on this fuel filter that we've just put in. So the prime bulb's getting really hard now to prime, and I can't see or smell any fuel, which is a really good sign. So I'm really happy with that. As far as I can see, there's no kinks in the hose. Just come around this side, looking at the hose as well. We can't see anything. That start relay back on. I might drain a bit of that fuel out, but that's draining the fuel's personal choice. You don't have to do that for a service or anything. So I've just turned that screw there on the carburetor, and there's a little pipe at the bottom, and it's just draining a bit of the fuel out. So if any sediment or water's in there, that's where it'll come out, hopefully. So we'll just drain that for us, say. I mean, you can drain it till there's no fuel coming out, but the bowl's quite big. Just gonna dip my screwdriver in there. Give it a smell. Yeah, it smells like, that's like clean fuel there. So we'll nip that back up. That's how you would drain the carburetor bowl. It's not, it wouldn't clean it, but it would drain any water out as a quick indication. Right, so I know it's self-explanatory, but I'll just show you how it all goes back together. So we'll just push all that back together. Got the bolt, which goes through there, and then it fits into that recess there. set the electric ratchet to tighten. And that's it all together. And just make sure that, say, these cables aren't caught or anything, the fuel lines aren't nicked, which looks good. Yeah, happy with that. So to change the fuel filter on this 20A, it's pretty straightforward. So you just have to remove that. I'm not, like I say, I'm not sure if the original one had like a cartridge that you would take a housing off and just like drain it out, but this one's an inline now. So it runs around to the fuel pump and then up to the carburetor. So we're going to change the spark plugs, and we're also going to do a compression test. Now on this engine, it's quite self-explanatory. We've got a top and bottom coil. The top one runs to the top cylinder, the bottom one runs to the bottom. On some engines it can be a bit confusing because you can have multiple cylinders. You could have an ignition coil pack which feeds two, like a wasted spark. This one, very easy. We don't even have to label these. The top one is the top one and the bottom one is the bottom one. So we just pull the boots off. Now we've got easy access to the spark plugs. Being a two-stroke engine, the spark plugs aren't recessed into the head. They're sort of almost external to the body of the cylinder head, which gives us great access for removing them. So I've got a spark plug socket here. We're just going to go on there. And we'll take both of them off. They weren't very tight at all then. They look fairly new. I don't think this engine's had much hours on it since it's been ran. Now we can see the condition. These are NGK B8HS. There's a bit of carbon fouling on them. Smell of fuel. Nothing to be worried about there. That's the top one, and we've got the bottom one. Bottom one, same condition. The gapping looks a bit close. I don't know if these have been gapped properly at all, but when we put the new ones in, we'll gap them. And so now both of them are off, we can run a compression test. We'll put a compression tester in, leave the bottom one open. We'll set the throttle to full throttle, so it's got full maximum airflow through. Obviously, we'll make sure the kill cord's not connected, so we're not generating a spark. And we'll do the top one, and then we'll do the bottom one, and we'll just see what the compression is. Hopefully it's an even balance between the two, which I suspect it will, because the customer says that the engine has been running fine. And it's a two-cylinder, so any imbalance will be quite noticeable. So we'll get that set up now, and we'll give it a pull. So this is the compression tester that I've got. It's just a Kennedy Professional. It reads PSI and bar. And we're looking, I'd say probably up to 120 range, something like that. A few factors. The engine hasn't been ran, so there's the piston rings might not have any, well, not that they wouldn't, but not as great as sealing. You know, if it's got oil, fuel oil mixture, it seals a little bit better, but unless they're completely worn out, we'll get a good reading. So that's it screwed in. It's got an O-ring on it, so we just sort of hand seat it there and zero it out on that button, and I'll give it a few pulls, say 3 or 4, just to get the pressure up, and we'll see what it is. So like I say, we set that to full throttle, which that's not going to stay, but I can manually hold. So that's our throttle usually. So when we pull that towards us, as you can see, the choke, sorry, not the choke, the throttle on the carburetor opens up. But when I let go, it springs back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it here, because we don't have to worry about the timing or anything. And I'll give it a few pulls, and then we'll see what reading we've got. Just bear with me. Pulling it's easier said than done. But yeah, top cylinder, we're reading, what's that? Probably about 128 psi, 128 psi, which I wasn't pulling it particularly hard there just because of the angle, but really happy with that. So we'll just set the bottom one now, and we're looking for about, I can't remember what they say, it's about 10% plus or minus of that figure. So that's the bottom one set up, and we'll just give it a pull. Setting the carburetor to wide open, just for maximum airflow. That's as much as I can probably do with that on that angle. And we're looking at there, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but 110, 20, probably about 126, 127. So overall, the compression on this engine is pretty good. I'm not sure what the original spec was, but it's not going to be any better than when it was brand new. But it's nearly 50 years old, so I'll gap some new spark plugs. I'll get the gap and I'll put it on the video, because I'm still waiting for the spark plugs to arrive. But I say it's just top and bottom, and then refit these top and bottom. So with the spark plugs, I've just got the new ones there. So I've taken the two old ones out. That's them there, the NGK B8HS, and here's the two new ones. Looking for information online about them, the gap between the electrode and the ground inside. I've measured the original ones, and they were a 0.65 mil. I don't think that's what they're supposed to be. Some outboards are a mil, so I've sort of opened the gap a little bit on them because it was smoking quite a bit. So I don't know if that's just like incomplete combustion. It wasn't black, but it was quite an oily mixture. So I don't know if it's, but the oil's not burning off or something. But I've opened it out to about 0.8. I wouldn't go more than a mil unless it specifically required it. Like normally you get like a bit of information on the block saying what the spark plug should be set to. But between 1 mil and I don't know 0.65 or something should be right. So I went for 0.8. It's not going to do any harm to the engine. If anything, it might improve the smoking a little bit. So I've gapped them there. They've got the feeler gauges, yeah, just on a 0.85. Opened them out a little bit. So I'll reinstall them, put the spark plug boots back on, and that's it for the spark plugs. So we'll do the thermostat now on this Yamaha 20A. It's located under the cover, just above cylinder number 1 where the spark plug is, right here. There's 4 bolts which are 10mm. Well, you need a 10mm socket to take them off. And you can see the profile of the thermostat, which is just there. So we'll remove this cover, we'll take the thermostat out if it's got one. Some engines you find which are quite old, they've removed the thermostat, which it's not a good thing. It's normally to mask a problem. So I'm not sure if this has a thermostat in it. I'm hoping it does, because the thermostat regulates the temperature of the engine, keeps the engine operating at the correct temperature. So what we'll do, we'll take these 4 bolts off, we'll take the thermostat out, and we'll put it in some hot water, and we'll visually watch it open, and then we'll put it in some cold water and watch it close again. Sometimes they do have a bit of like salt build-up on them, so we'll clean it up as well. If it hasn't got one, I'm just going to leave it as it is. I'll advise the customer it hasn't got one. But sometimes if you put one in, they've removed it for a reason. Sometimes if an engine's overheating. But this engine, around the gaskets, around the cylinder head, the exhaust jacket, they're really clean. So it doesn't look like there's any evidence of overheating. So I'm confident it's got one and that it's functioning. So let's say we'll take them off now, and then we'll cut to testing it. Just these 4 bolts to remove, very straightforward. One thing I will say with these thermostat covers and the bolts is don't force them, because you can shear these bolts really easily. Shear their heads off. Because it is just an aluminium block. I mean, this one's cast into the cylinder head, so it's not the entire block, but some of them are in the block. But an engine this age, it would be a bit of a problem. So just try it back and forth with a ratchet for a bit, and just see if it does come off. I mean, you can tell straight away if a bolt's going to come out or not if you've done it enough times. Just look at the condition of this engine. I knew they would. So let's say the 4 bolts are out, and just take it off. There's the underside, quite clean. Just put it in the parts tray there. And we can see inside here, so we have got a bit of salt build-up, and there's the thermostat. First appearance, it's looking good. The seal on it's looking all right. Let's say there is a bit of salt build-up, but there's not much. This engine, you can tell, has been can't say my words. It's been flushed with fresh water after every use, because the build-up for its age is minimum. There is a gasket on there, but we'll clean all this up, and I've got some RTV or like Yamaha blue compound that we can put on to aid the seal. I probably will scrape this old gasket off. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how we get on. But so we'll pull this out now. See if I can do it with my fingers. No, I'll do it off camera. Probably just try and get a little flat blade screwdriver and then just pop it up. Worst case, which is not recommended, is grabbing this metal, like the end of the piston, and pulling it with with pliers, because you'll damage the end, damage the seat. It's not good practice. So I'll get it out and then we'll have a look at the condition. So I've just popped it out there with a screwdriver, and at first glance it's quite clean. There's no corrosion, rust on it or anything like that. Bit of salt on it inside the body there. There's a little bit of salt build-up, but nothing that we can't clean out. We'll just blow it out, to be honest. There's not much there. So let's say we'll go inside and we'll test this now with some hot water, and we'll witness the wax in this lower bit, I believe it is, that expands because of the heat and pushes the piston up, which opens this top part here, which allows water through the block. Alright, so I've just put the thermostat in this little bowl. I have cleaned it up. It's in surprisingly good condition. I don't think it's original, but I'll put some hot water in here. Hope it doesn't steam the camera up. And as you can see there, that piston right on the end has lifted because the wax inside is expanded, and it's acted upon the piston, which has opened that thermostat. But looking at the condition of that in that water, it's functioning for what we need. Now I'll just prove that it's working. We'll get some cooler water here, and we'll just place it back inside. And as you can see there, it's shut. So that's how we just test the thermostat. Like I say, now we'll put it back in the engine, and we'll put some compound on just to aid that gasket. I don't like reusing gaskets, but like I say, I'm struggling to find parts for it, so I'm going to leave it intact, and I'm going to seal the face that came off. We'll give it a test run the engine later on anyway. Any leaks, we'll just take all the gasket off and just put the compound on itself. But the gasket hasn't ripped or anything, so it is compressed, but it's stuck to one side. So we'll just put the RTV between the body and the gasket. So this is what I use if you haven't got gaskets. This Yamaha, it's an instant gasket. I believe this is the blue one. No, this is a clear one, but it's fuel and oil resistant, and it comes with a small applicator if required, but I'm just going to dab it on. So what we'll do is we'll clean the face up on there. I'll clean the face up on the other bit, and then I'll just put that compound on, and that just aids sealing it. I'm not going to go mad with it, because when it squeezes down, I don't want stuff going inside and clogging any passageways up. So just a light coating, and then we'll put the 4 bolts back in. Obviously remembering to put the thermostat back in as well. It'll only go in one way, thankfully, this engine, because I have seen thermostats which can be reversed, which is obviously not good because the engine just overheats. But that's how we test the thermostat. So I've cleaned the surface up there, and I've put a tiny bead all the way around of that Yamaha. We've cleaned up the internal and the face gasket on here. The gasket's well and truly stuck down. So got the thermostat in, and then it's just a case of putting the cover back on, and the 4 bolts, they don't have to be torqued like a head bolt. We're literally just applying like a light pressure, because once we've got the engine running, we can, if it is weeping a little bit, we can nip them up. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to over stress these bolts. They're quite small, going into aluminium. You don't want to strip anything out. So I've never had one leak before. We just tighten them down, just give it like an 1/8 of a turn or a 1/4 turn on top. There will be a torque spec somewhere, but with an engine this age, I haven't got the manual for it. So yeah, that's how we do the thermostat. So just press that down there, the 4 bolts in, and that's it. So now on this Yamaha 20A, we're going to do the gearbox oil, and we've got the drain and an oil level. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove the bottom one and drain the oil out. But before we do that, we're just going to make sure that the top one and the bottom one are free before we fully remove them. Because if we pull the bottom one out and some oil comes out and we can't get the top one out, we can't refill it, because we fill it from the bottom to the top. I've gone ahead and checked these. They are free to come out, but as always, I like to take the top one out first every time. So we've got the top one out, and now we're going to do the bottom one, and we'll drain all the oil out. And as we're draining it out, we're checking the condition. We're looking for water in the oil, like emulsification. But straight away I can see that gear oil is a nice blue colour. There's no sort of, I'm going to smell of it, there's no like smell of oxidization or anything like that. There's no shine to it. That gear oil looks pretty much brand new. If we'd known that and the condition, we probably wouldn't have had to change the gear oil. But it's always good sense if you're doing a service just to change the gear oil anyway. Looking at the condition of it all, even the cotter pin in the prop looks fairly new. So I think this engine's had a service within the last 2 years at best. If not, the engine has not had much use. I say there's no moisture in there at all. The oil smells clean, it looks clean. What I'm not going to do, I'm not going to pressure test the gearbox on either pressure or vacuum, because if we blow a seal, I don't know what the availability of seals are. So looking at the condition, there's no reason to suspect that there's any damage to any of the lip seals inside on the prop shaft or the drive shaft, or even on the gear selector itself. So we'll just go ahead and we'll just replace the gear oil with a marine gear oil, and we'll then seal it back up. So we'll just wait for this to drain. The gearbox itself, I mean, that's the gearbox is in there. They don't hold much, so we'll just drain it out. And once it's drained, let's say we'll refill it from the bottom, purges all the air out. Once the oil comes out of there, we put the top plug in. It creates a partial vacuum for when we pull the bottom one out. We shouldn't lose much oil, and we can put the bottom plug back in. And we'll also replace the 2 felt washers which are sealing the box as well. Okay, so that's the gear oil drained. I've got the fill line from a push bottle here, and now it's just a case of we're just going to pump it up. I'll show you there, a Quicksilver gear oil there, and we just pump it up until oil comes out of the oil level hole there. Let's say this gearbox doesn't hold much. I've removed both top and bottom seals as well off the drain and fill, the vent plugs, and we'll just put 2 new felt washers on as well once it's full. Let's say we just fill it up till a bit of oil comes out the top there, and it's as easy as that. Obviously, filling these gearboxes, you do need sort of the adapter kit to go on there. You can do it if you just had like a rubber bung, you probably could push it on, but the big no-no is you don't fill it from the top. You can't, because there's nowhere for the air to be purged from. I mean, I know this outboard has another hole there, another plug there, but with the oil level being up here, when I took the plug out, the oil level was at that level there. So I'm just going to refill it as is. Like I said, I haven't got the manual. I mean, it's at the top of the casing, so, but having a little bit extra oil in isn't the end of the world. We're not over pressurizing this box at all.
and the hundreds of gearboxes that I've done, I've never ever had a failure for having too much oil in. We just put it to the level, because these aren't lubricated off oil pumps or anything. This is literally just the oil's in the gears, and your clutch is in there, the dog clutch. This is quite often the longest job of an oil change, of a outboard service, is refilling the gear oil, because it is quite slow, especially when you have a big engine like a Bigfoot or some of the 200 horsepower gearboxes. Some of them are a litre and a half upwards, and it does take a while. So I think you get the drift of what I'm doing. So when the oil comes out of there, we'll put a new washer on that plug, fit it, take that out, and we'll fit a new one, and that's the gear oil done. And then we'll clean up, and we'll make sure we haven't got any leaks.
Okay, so with this Yamaha 20A, we're in a position to go for a test run now. And say we've changed the spark plugs, the fuel filter, the gear oil, and we've checked the thermostat for operation. We weren't able to change the impeller or water pump housing due to the lack of parts due to the age. But what we've done now, I've got it in a water tank. I've connected it to a battery. We've got a fuel tank which is connected here. We've got a kill stop. We've got a key, the choke. We've got some other connections because it's normally on a boat. And we're ready to start. So obviously we've got it in neutral. We've double checked that everything's connected, spark plugs, everything like that, fuel, the vents open, we've primed it up, we made sure it's in neutral. Most engines shouldn't start in neutral, but there's no guarantee. Ones of this age, there's an interlock, some of them will start in gear. And we're just going to keep the throttle position, that's the stop there for the idle, so that's at the idle position. The choke's fully in, and we're ready to go. Now, one thing to consider, and if anyone knows any different, or whether I'm doing this right or wrong, I was always under the assumption that if it was say electric start with a manual recoil starter as well, that you had to have it connected to a battery at all times, or you could damage the rectifier or other electronic components on board. So if you were to start it without the leads connected to a battery and just recoil start, in theory yes it would start, but would that damage say the rectifier or any of the charge coils under the flywheel? I was always told that you should always have it connected to a battery, but if I'm wrong or anything like that, just let me know in the comments, because it's more curiosity than anything. I mean, I've got it connected just to be on the safe side. The battery's pretty much flat, but we're not starting it off the electric start, we're doing the recoil start for this test. If the engine does run long enough to put a charge out to charge that battery, we'll give it a try, but I don't think it's going to spin it over quick enough to fire it over. The customer says he fires it off the batteries now and again. He's obviously on a boat, so he's got batteries, but I'm just doing it off the recoil there. So I think we're ready to go. Everything's connected. I've got the fuel, it's connected, the key. I'm going to leave it on the run position, so we've got obviously off and out, the first position, and then again the next position, which would set back to position 1, would be the start. I'm going to put it on the on position just in case there's a kill circuit in there, but my thought is this is the kill stop. We push it on until it's home, and we'll give it a go. Hopefully it starts. I think the water's deep enough, it's above the impeller housing, and the outlet's in here somewhere for the telltale. But I'll set the camera up and we'll give it a pull, and we'll see if it runs. So there we go, I've got it set up, the key's on. I'm just going to give it a pull, set the flywheel in the right position. That's pretty good for a first pull. Good telltale coming out there for the coolant. Yeah, the exhaust. We're a little bit low on water in the tank, so it'd be nice anyway if it was a bit deeper, but with that telltale flowing there, really good. Good strong telltale. Just having a check around now. Can't see any leaks around the thermostat housing. Looking inside the engine for any fuel leaks or anything. Can't see any. Battery leads aren't getting hot. I'll check the rectifier in a second as well. But I think that's a really healthy engine for the age of it, nearly 50 years old. So I'll just leave that running for a bit. That's an idle. I mean, it does sound like it's idling a little high, but it is cold, so it might be right. Sounds like it's just falling back a little bit there. Squeeze the bulb a little bit more. A little bit smoky, but it is a 2-stroke oil mix. Does sound like it's going to stall out. I'll do a little bit of throttle on it. Yeah, quite a smoky engine, but it seems to run fine. I'd say like if it was in a boat, it'd be a bit lower in the water as well. But it sounds fine. Yeah, I think I'll leave that running just to see if it does stall out. It does sound like it might. Yeah, there we go, it's stalled. So I'll have a look to see what the reason is behind that. Maybe the choke was fully in. Yeah, I'll just check all the fuel lines and everything, just double check. But yeah, it seems a healthy engine overall. But I'll wind the idle up a little bit because it did fall back a bit. So we'll do that just on there. It's probably just a quarter turn or something. I've upped the idle just a quarter turn there, but one thing I didn't consider was, because this is on remote, these are fixed, so I don't know whether this been loose, because that is affecting the timing. So they're moving, you can hear it. So I might just take it back a quarter turn and just bring that control arm this way a bit and just see if that alters the timing. So that's what it was set at. We just, yeah, do you think these arms will be fixed? So that's just flopping around. And you can see the timing plate here. Fuel pump's working, it's throwing fuel in. Yeah, like I say, I'll leave this running for a bit. I'll tinker with it, but I don't think there's going to be any issues overall. There I go, I've just adjusted the position in a little bit, just because it is off the remote, so it is wobbling around a little bit, but it is running fine. Got no issues, no concerns with it. It is a bit smoky, but it could just be the oil mix, and it is an itch with the engine at the end of the day. Like I say, it's a bit of an easy service, this one, without the water pump. But if anyone's got any info on where to get water pumps from, impellers, upper gasket, you know, the plates, the upper housings, anything like that, just leave a link. Would be very much appreciated the next time it needs servicing or if the water pump fails. I'm sure there is parts for it, because it's an old engine, but it's not, like I say, it's not a rare engine. As you can see, it's running really nice. overall, really happy with that, how it's turned out. Obviously to stop the engine we just pull the kill cord there and the engine stops. But interestingly enough, the key in the off position doesn't stop the engine. So I'm not sure what's up with that. It might be different when it's set up on a remote, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it's wired. It does sound like the timing's off a little bit, where it's like it sounds like it's chopping a little bit, but who's to say? It's running fine, in my opinion. You know, it's running and it's responsive. Really responsive on the throttle, being with the smoke. Yes. Everything's a bit loose. But I hope you've enjoyed that video. If it's helped you in any way, it's probably more like it's going to help me with the comments, I think. But leave a thumbs up and a like.